The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Just a couple of stragglers here who are trying to log in. I can pretty much detect when everybody's screen is connected, so we'll give them about 15 seconds and we'll get started. And there's a bit of a preamble to this, so if you're just catching my voice, don't be too concerned. The presentation has not begun yet. I am Mike O'Connor, EVP of Marketing at NuVoodoo Media Services. Welcome today to the last installment of our second in our spring webinar series. This is our 2019 contesting guide. In just a couple of minutes, I'll be introducing my partner, Head of Research, Lee Jacobs. He oversees all of our research efforts at NuVoodoo, from the current and library music testing we do for music stations to the perceptual testing we do for not just radio, but podcasters and political candidates and causes and likewise. Before I hand things over to Lee, just a quick reminder about what we're going to be covering, because the marketing department is, if not Lee's biggest client, we're certainly his most demanding, because our team is really on the hook for helping delivering ratings for our clients. And so we field studies on an ongoing basis to make sure we truly understand that most special type of radio listener, the likely panelist and diary keeper. We're constantly adjusting our mix of tactics and strategy in reflection of what our research finds digital in particular is such a moving target. So today's presentation features data collected back in January, which is part of our 13th ratings prospect study. It's a webinar we're going to break into a couple of parts. The first part is all things contesting and sweepstakes related. It'll be a particular focus, especially with our new data, in how to engage and activate listeners for your sweepstakes. What can you do to maximize participation and minimize some reluctance that's born out of a distrust of big companies and their ability to handle data, and even measure whether your particular contest or promotion is worthwhile from their standpoint to participate in the first place. So beyond the contesting, we're also going to explore a couple of elephant in the room topics. We're in the media business, the media under tremendous scrutiny, especially this morning. The toxicity that's in our environment, does that extend to local news radio or to big personality day parts and morning shows that bang the drum for or against what's going on in Washington, D.C., and is that the right approach, or should we steer clear altogether? We've also been losing ground in the area that we've dominated for decades, radio as the source for undiscovered artists or for new music discovery. So where are we at 2019, and what can we do about it? So today's presentation should take about a half an hour. Our participants will be on mute for the duration, but your voice is certainly not on mute. Our producer, Jake, is manning the chat box, and we'll field questions and collect them, and we'll get through every single one of them. We won't leave until we've answered all of your questions, so as something pops up, just chat it in, and we'll get them in our Q&A session. Before I turn things over to Lee, just a quick review of some of our evergreen data. These are the answers we get every time we've asked in the previous 12 studies. This is the kind of non-moving target stuff that you can use today, even though we didn't necessarily ask the question in January. So we put it all together and organized our evergreens into a top 10 list. Let's start with number 1. Money, or the chance to win money, is truly at the heart of this game. It's what motivates likely ratings respondents. So when marketing, it's really incumbent upon you when the goal is tactical and we're playing the meter or diary game, and we need to target reward seekers, which are those what's in it for me types. Number 2, when you're looking to package cash and cash equivalents, always top the list of desirable prizes. Even when it comes to format related prizes, how you package cash will beat the typical things like concert ticket giveaways or MP3 giveaways or flyaways. Notice the huge disparity, no matter what the prize is, in the appeal between those who are likely to accept a meter and those who would never participate in Nielsen. And that same kind of pattern holds true even when we test it against a different methodology. The diary methodology, of course, there's not nearly as much compensation involved, but the the stakes aren't as big either. You're only stuck tracking your radio listening for a week. And even though we conducted this study in the top 50 markets, we do model in respondents for both methodologies. So the results tend to track really closely to one another. Our third finding is that if you need to stretch your budget, we have found repeatedly when we squared off different prize values that $500 has virtually the same perceived value as $1,000, particularly among the ratings inclined. And while 100 in recent studies is carrying less and less water, it is this $500 amount that gives you an opportunity to be creative with your packaging. So if you can cut the contest prize in half and help extend the duration of your sweepstakes or increase the number of occasions offered on a daily basis, we think that's a really good thing to do. We've seen it bear fruit in dozens and dozens of client campaigns, even up against those $1,000 national contests that run. Number 4, in marketing, there's no reason to cover the whole market. And in fact, it is better if you can bombard folks with kind of your communication path and through at least 2 different channels. Delivering your marketing message through multiple channels usually delivers superior results. So we firmly advocate cutting down the amount of people that you need to target and hitting them in a number of different ways, not just with frequency, but with a diversity of approach. And whether it's any of the marketing services that we here at NuVoodoo offer, which is more of the direct marketing kind of thing, we'd also tell you, and if you were with us for a previous webinar, that outdoor most certainly has its place, and all of those things can be dialed into the proper zip codes where the meters fall, where the diaries fall, or the meters are for your format. Finding 5, if you are looking for that definitive answer to argue for or against your upcoming company's national contest, we don't have definitive conclusions for you. We just have some data to help you make an informed decision. So on one hand, in the last few studies, whether we pitted equal size prizes against each other in that national versus local call-in to win dynamic, or when we've made the playing field uneven by hamstringing the local side of things with lower prize values, the local battle wins, the local constituency wins every time, no matter what demo, no matter what format we square those things off. So if you're a local radio station saddled with a local prize budget up against a national prize budget, we'd urge you to take advantage of the fact that all of your winners are local and to really tout that. Now, if you're executing a national contest, please don't be distraught. When we measure the appeal of national contests, we just don't see the baggage. Listeners in general aren't even aware of multi-city contests, and while the awareness for national contests is quite a bit higher, as you look here on this screen, on a percentage basis, when you compare that to, with diary and meter likelies, compared to those who would never participate, or the whole sample, it's by no means ubiquitous. In fact, when we look at only those who are aware of national contests, the negative numbers just don't spike up. And if we insert back in to our filter all of the people who are unfamiliar with national prizes, coupled with those who are familiar but don't have a negative opinion, you can see the negatives are really minuscule. So with larger prizes offered more often by national contests, well-executed ones don't appear to have the liability that you think they might have based on the prior data. And we make thousands of phone calls to offices and workplaces every year on behalf of local clients participating in national contests, and we just don't get the pushback about this being a negative. And we do have to disclose for a lot of our clients the fact that we're offering a multi-city contesting opportunity. The baggage just doesn't come up. Appointment times, and the finding number 7. Now, we've tested appointment times a number of different ways over the years, and you may just think the best way to do it is to measure persons using measured media in an hour that's important for you to battle your competitor because they're in spots and you're not. That's probably the number 1 way to set contest occasions. But lacking that intel, if you're trying to reach the broadest audience possible, the 7 and 5 o'clock hours, drive times, are probably the most useful, with lunchtime being, kind of a runner-up. But those are the times when the most number of people are available, and so it kind of makes sense. But when we consider the portion of the day of radio prime I'm referring to now, where there's more quarter hours available, and that would be the workday day parts. The optimal appointment times that show up are always early in the workday. 70% of 2 hour plus a day TSL, terrestrial radio, comes from at work. We've done 11 studies and we've seen this every time. So when it's less about mass reach and more about trying to game the system for the maximum quarter-hour return on your investment, park your appointments early in the workday. The 8 o'clock hour, when folks first get to work, even the 9 o'clock hour has upside. Next, you don't have to spend marketing money all over the market. We told you about convergent channels being a magical synergistic effect. Well, whether you're using addressable cable or bus benches and transit shelters and spectaculars, or whether you're focused on NuVoodoo direct marketing tactics, only about a third of the market is in play. That's what typically delivers about 2/3 of the share for any format. And with Nielsen providing great hot zip intelligence, you really don't have to overspend to reach the most critical members of your target audience. Number 9. This is keeps with our less is more theme. Marketing to large households means finding meter or diary gold. The compensation drives participation, and there's more of it due to larger households with either methodology, so it shouldn't surprise you that larger households participate more. In just about every study we've conducted, the percent of the sample likely to participate as a Nielsen's ratings respondent from households of 3 or more comes out at nearly 2 in 3 of all of the thousands of people we've spoken to over the years. Nielsen doesn't wait for that. And when we compare that to the actual number of households, and we're using 2554 here for this example, when we look at the number of 2554 households with 3 or more in it, it's only about 45% of all households. So here's the trick. Why spend money direct mailing all the households within your zips? What if we could cut our mail costs by 55% and still have a reasonable shot at affecting 2/3 of the installed meters or the diary in tab for the format? Well, that's exactly what we've done in the past now for clients, and that has generally resulted in the same success track records when we're mailing everybody. The anecdotal example I can share is there was these are folks that came off a panel that we were able to interview. And it was a mom and her 4 daughters. They all live together and they all work together at the same family-owned nail salon. It's a zip code we mailed to, and certainly they were influenced by the marketing, and it turns out that was ratings gold for our client. Number 10, and finally, in past studies, we sounded the alarm about this in our blogs, in our industry webinars, in our advertising to the press, anyone who would listen, that we had a real problem. Yes, it's true that contesting drives those ratings respondents, but it was also true that depending upon which segment we were looking at, young end, PPM friendly, particularly African American and Hispanic constituencies, that skepticism was reaching as high as 60%. And pretty much in any demo cell, if you were likely to participate in Nielsen, half thought that radio station contests were rigged, fake news. So this was the laundry list of things over the years that they've told us that radio could do to convince them more that their offer of cash or other giveaways was legit. This list does probably not look surprising to you. It is the checklist of best practices that we've been pounding away. So we've been, I'd say, banging the drum for a good year, Lee, actually more like 2 or 3 years. And so we would hope that perhaps the data has changed. So as we look at the January report card, how well has radio heard us shouting from the rooftops? Has this perception gotten any better?
A little bit, Mike, thanks. It has been up to 50% or 48% of the PPM likelies, and this time we're seeing 37% who say most radio station contests are rigged. They never really give away the prizes. We think it's connected ultimately, as you said, to the national contests where stations are long on contest solicit promos and then short on promos releasing the names of winners, the proof of performance, because now the winner was from another city and the winner being excited in audio told the tale that they weren't from around here. The numbers are still pretty high among the PPM likelies, 18 to 34. You see those numbers, and those are people who were important to us. Among the diary likely 18 to 44s, that's not looking so great either. And face it, these are the kind of CHR young end listeners whose participation is crucial to making the contest work, but maybe we've gotten ahead of ourselves. Let me frame this all up a little bit better. A lot of ground to cover here and promise to be through toward the bottom of the hour. But if you've got questions along the way, you can chat them in on the GoToWebinar control panel, and our producer Jake will be keeping track of them, and we'll get through them all at the end of the presentation. The data we're showing today, taken primarily from our 13th NuVoodoo Ratings Prospect Study, where we interviewed 3,084 respondents ages 14 to 54 across all the PPM markets. The sample is set up to be proportional to market population, so there are more interviews from New York than there are from, say, Memphis or Hartford, and we've weighted the interviews to match the characteristics of those combined 48 PPM markets in terms of gender, age, and ethnicity. We conduct all of our research at NuVoodoo using compensated online samples so that immediately respondents have at least one thing in common with Nielsen respondents. They're getting paid for their opinions. These data collected in early January as people were getting back into their regular lives after the holidays. In this latest study, we took a deeper look at trust. We know that people are getting skeptical about anyone keeping their data safe, but let's start where some of that data mistrust began. In the wake of the Cambridge Analytica Facebook data scandal a winter ago, we looked at whether people believed that social media platforms would be able to keep their personal information safe when we were doing Ratings Prospect Study 12 last summer. And the numbers weren't great for Facebook out of the gate, or frankly, most any other social platform. We're looking here at the results of a 10-point trust scale showing results of respondents who rated their trust at 8, 9, or 10. For context, if this were trust in a news product on an info-focused radio station, I'd be expecting to see numbers in the 60s or 70s. And I'm trending the past two studies here, and you can see trust hasn't gone up in the intervening months. Most of these platforms now in the 20s. Bottom line, as consumers, we really don't expect these folks are going to safeguard our information, but we keep giving them more of it each and every day. Now, the ratings likelies, however, are trusting souls. They like the media. They believe in the media. If they didn't, they probably wouldn't participate in the ratings methodology. And generally, things will look rosier among that population. They're more faithful that media outlets will do a good job keeping their information safe. But even among the PPM and diary likely population, it's still only about half who believe that Facebook or Pinterest or Instagram or YouTube are going to keep their personal information secure. To a certain degree, trust that social media platforms will keep your personal information safe vary with the populations who use them, but overall the numbers here, frankly, are kind of dismal. So what does that say about their faith that your radio station will be able to keep their personal information safe? Well, about half the PPM or diary likely say they are less likely to register online for radio station contests because they are concerned about the station's ability to safeguard their data. It's a point you need to cover in your promos, that if you're asking for information, you're not going to turn it around and give it to local merchants who want to market to them, or you're not going to lose their information. But nearly half complain that it's too hard to enter radio station contests on their mobile phones. Why would that be? Well, consider this point. That's 44% of the PPM likelies, 46% of the diary likelies. The numbers are pretty similar for radio stations ask too much personal information. So let's take a look at the numbers for the types of information they're comfortable giving you. To enter a contest for a prize you really wanted to win, nearly 3/4 say they'd give up their email address. Now, 2/3 are okay giving you their name, gender a couple of ticks lower. Over 3 and 5 say their age is okay, and over half are comfortable giving up their zip code. Beyond that, things go down pretty quickly. You see there on the right side of the page, 2% say that they'd give up their social security number. Okay, but we say the best practice is to get as little information as you really need to run the game. Email address, a checkbox to make sure they confirm they're of legal age to play their game. That's probably enough. Again, the numbers are rosier among the ratings inclined, but it's still less than half as you get out past asking for zip code. So keeping your entry requirements focused will get lots more people to register for your game. And isn't that the real point? To get them into first-party data that you control? We suggest you have a strategy to ask a little more information every time they register with the station. An interesting note, remember 2% of the overall sample would give up their social security number, and you see 6 or 7% of the ratings likelies would give up their social security number to play your game. trusting souls who believe in media. So what would get them interested rather? We asked, how interested would you be in a radio station that advertised each of these things? And the top of the table is severe weather coverage, but the number 2 is times of commercial-free hours, and number 3, actually tied for number 2 for the PPM likelies, is a new cash giveaway contest. And you see how the PPM and diary likelies are motivatable by contests, and that's a good thing. Among the PPM likely 25 to 44s, those are some big numbers for both the times of commercial-free hours and a new cash giveaway contest. You see similar diaries with the similar numbers rather with the diary likely 18 to 44s for commercial-free hours and a new cash giveaway contest, both polling in majorities. And imagine if you could team those up and wrap your contest around commercial-free programming. But you can do that, and it's really, really potent. Over the previous dozen ratings prospect studies, we've looked at lots of prizes. This time out, we looked at 6 different presentations of $500 contest prizes. Mike said how powerful $500 is. Overall, nothing substantially outperformed the concept of $500 5 times a day, but when you get down to the nitty-gritty, there are some places where the idea that the jackpot grows until it goes has some merit. And there are some who are interested in an altruistic kind of contest where they win money and the station also donates an equivalent amount of cash to a charity of a winner's choosing. Among the PPM likelies, all of these prizes performed well, and while the jackpot grows until it goes doesn't really outperform the basic concept of $500 5 times a day, it might help you differentiate your prize in a crowded field. Among the diary likelies, many of these prizes resonated well. It's just a matter of choosing the best spin to make your game stand out. In terms of contest execution, the devil is in the details. We see here, however, the notion of calling in to win, being caller number 25, is a less interesting idea in 2019 than some digital-based entry. Among the PPM likelies, you need to get up to the 35 to 54s, and truthfully, we'd need to go substantially 55 plus before you'd see a large percentage of those who want to play a radio station contest by calling in to win. Texting in or registering on the station website and playing the name game turn out to be more palatable overall, but in any case, it's incumbent upon you to make sure you get great winner audio every time. In fact, great winner everything, because now we've got the opportunity to publish in social media channels and on your website so that you can build promos and other media to demonstrate proof of performance for your contest and fight back against that rigged contest perception. The numbers change around a little bit among the diary likelies, but the overall impact is the same. Calling in to win is slowly dying, digital entries are growing, and the name game tends to work across the demos.
So we'll be getting to your questions about contesting at the end of this webinar, but we wanted to spend the last 10 minutes covering a couple of what we call elephant in the room topics. So we're sifting through verbatims of the dozens of client studies we've conducted over the past 12 months. We definitely noticed kind of a change in what listeners were giving feedback about, the unaided responses. So we kind of rolled up some of the more interesting ones and confirmed with a series of agree or disagree questions, mostly related here to issues that we loosely classify as Me Too movement era issues or Trump/Washington politics era. The political environment has definitely seeped into even music station studies, something we hadn't seen before. So we compiled these comments, validated them, and now Lee is going to share with you some of the more interesting results.
Right. As Mike said, the ideas were born out of client studies. We had one client where a morning show wanted to jump in on the late night TV bandwagon and do lots of humor about the state of things in Washington, but then their numbers started trending down. We did a study and found out the audience didn't really want that kind of content from their morning show. So in this broader study across all the PPM markets, we floated the idea that music stations should offer an escape from politics and serve as an oasis from the current turmoil in Washington. And you can see here it's a majority of the sample overall, and better than 2/3 of the PPM or diary likelies. At the same time, similar percentages responded well to the idea that they'd listen more to a music station that promotes unity and inclusiveness instead of division and discord. And you can imagine thematically that playing particularly well with alternative rock stations. And while the numbers are smaller overall, you can imagine there'll be demos and format constituencies where the idea the Me Too movement kind of idea that they'd listen more to a music station that takes a stand against sexual harassment and gender discrimination would play well. It turns out it does. Here are the results shown through the prism of a dozen different music format P1 constituencies. At least half overall were swayed by at least one of these concepts, and often more than that. But truthfully, you care most about those likely to show up in ratings samples. So here are the PPM likelies shown through the prism of format P1 constituencies. Now, we've had to artfully combine some format P1 groups to have enough sample to make these, show these data. Now, we've combined rock and alt P1s and AC and hot AC P1s, or what I've labeled library P1s here, which would be classic rock, classic hits, and 80s formats like Jack's. But you can see the potency of some of these ideas among different format constituencies. Not surprisingly, younger female-targeted formats like CHR, rhythmic CHR, resonated well with the idea that a station should take a stand against sexual harassment and gender discrimination, and as predicted, rock and alt P1s liked the idea of a music station promoting unity and inclusiveness. And most formats showed strong interest in the idea that a music station should offer an escape from politics at this point, particularly the country P1s. Here are those same format P1 breakouts among the diarrhea likelies, a few changes, but overall the themes are intact. At the same time, we wondered whether calls that media outlets had become the enemy of the people had sunken in among spoken word P1s. As it turns out, most spoken word P1s don't think their local radio news and information stations are the enemy of the people, and comparatively few believe that local radio news and information stations deliver fake news, though you do see a troubling number agreeing with that idea among the political talk P1s. That's 37%. That's up beyond just noise. That's significant. And then the idea that they'd be more or less likely to listen to a talk radio station that advertised its support for the president. Well, you can see the political talk P1s were, for the most part, more likely to listen to that type of station, while the NPR P1s were, not surprisingly, less likely.
So the other sort of issue, and this one is probably a little closer to our home for music radio program directors, it's no secret that our utility as the place to go to for music discovery has been eroded by the emergence of many digital choices over the past couple of decades. So how do we look in 2019, and what, if anything, can we do about it?
Well, it's certainly a change. When you ask people what sources they would expect to be good at helping them discover music, new music rather, YouTube is currently at the top of the heap. Even among the ratings likelies, FM radio is no better than a distant second. When you get to the top quintile of FM listeners, those listening at least 2 hours a day, FM can do no better than tie YouTube as a music discovery source. Of course, just because we're losing that utility to a digital source isn't terrible. That means we know where to find them, YouTube, how to use advertising in that channel to connect with those who are finding new music that you play on your station. They're finding it on YouTube, that type of music, those artists, that vibe. Well, you can advertise there, connect with them, and then move them to your frequency when they're susceptible to listening to FM. Among PPM likely format P1s, one group remains tied to FM for music discovery, and that's the story of that connection between Nashville and country radio. And it looks great there among that psychographic that would likely take a meter. It's different among the slightly different constituency who would take a diary. Country loses its edge there for music discovery. So that's a lot of ground in not too much time. So hopefully we've got some questions that we can answer.
Yeah, thank you for your questions, everybody. First question is, we had mentioned cash and cash equivalents. Do groceries and gift cards usually outrank pay your bills or paycheck bonuses as we listed them?
You know, it's cyclical. When we first started doing research, which was, it was on the tails of the Great Recession, and we most certainly saw the kinds of things that met a psychological fear or concern were rising to the top. So all of those issues about bills overhanging, comparative prizes, different ways that you might splurge with your cash. We've seen perhaps a rotation back to more of the splurge size. So given a choice between rent or mortgage or doing the plastic payoff, I would say that right now we're kind of in that cycle of we Americans have a little bit more discretionary money than they used to. Mom and dad are both working in those large households, as opposed to when we first started our research, where very clearly only one parent, if not both parents, were unemployed or not working. So that's been a change. But no matter what the time frame, we always see cash show up number one, cash equivalents, different ways to package cash, always ahead of format prizes, no matter what sort of part of the economy we're in.
Great. Next question is, does the way we do telemarketing change when doing a local or national contest?
It can. I mean, we don't really have any clients that are executing national contests doing data capture, and that's really the two different types of telemarketing programs we do. In the national contest, you're telling people what's in it for them, when to listen, and we generally are asking people to grab a pen to write down appointment times and the number to call or text back and the other promotional logistics. With data capture programs, those are largely driven by stations playing the name game, where they're announcing names at set times and giving listeners a limited a deadline to respond. And so that would be the big difference. One, we're asking for personal information, and the second one, we're not. So the response rate to the latter tends to be higher because the bar is a lot lower. Our response rates, depending upon how many times you go through the list, when calling offices, we never call homes, but offices, it's a 50%-ish response rate. Sometimes as high as 60 when we're calling through the list twice. For data capture programs, it's more like 20 to 40%, because giving up somebody's first and last name is just a higher bar than agreeing to anonymously write down some information about when to listen to score your $1,000.
Great. Next question is, have we seen any research on whether giving away a big cash prize over a long period of time is worth it over doing smaller amounts?
I think the two sides of that are how small. You'd seen earlier in this deck that as you get down toward $100, listen, there's scant souls who would turn their nose up at the idea of, hey, here's an extra $100 that you didn't have before. On the other hand, depending upon where you are and the mechanisms, where we're anecdotally of stations giving away $100 contest prizes that people have to come and pick up from the station, which is a great tactic because it means that you have some contact with them, you can get some audio, maybe get a picture or a video that you can post. The problem is they may not show up to get the $100. So there's that to be dealt with. And then overall, there's I guess, Mike, you'd want to talk about the diminishing returns with a game that runs on too long.
Sure. And again, getting back to the issue at hand, smaller prizes delivered more often is always wins when we ask it. But again, as Lee mentioned, too low a prize value, and that's not motivational to begin with. That's why we kind of settle in on $500 is sort of the sweet spot. If you can do enough weeks with $500 as your core prize, we'd urge you to do that instead of cutting the duration of your contest in half. With a bigger prize amount. But some general rules about duration, supported by marketing. We'd tell you that after 5 or 6 weeks of digital marketing, for example, the I get it factor kicks in. And you start to see response rates on digital ads go down unless you've changed the game up materially, which is something that we urge clients that do have the ability to run longer. We'd say, by month 3, or after the first 6 weeks, try to have a second act for your promotion where the stakes change, the amount of winners goes up, or the bar gets higher from a cash value perspective. But even then, after about 10 weeks, we really see the I get it factor kick in. It's sort of like the effect that a prescribed drug can have, where the first time you take it, it has a really big effect, but if you keep taking it, you build a tolerance up to the point where your ratings might get hit when you withdraw it, but it's really not adding ratings incrementally beyond a certain point. So our sweet spot is 6 to 10 weeks.
Great. That's all the questions. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Well, this webinar will be delivered to your inbox So if you write to ask us to share the deck, we won't be able to do that. We'll keep this one pretty close to the vest, but all the data will be at your fingertips. So if there's a screen grab or two you need to make to convince your upper management of something, by all means, we give this information away to the industry because it helps make us all better. And that's the goal here. This is our marketing. We have nothing to sell you today. We know that you'll find us if you need us for research or marketing services. But otherwise, have a good day, and thank you for attending.